Hello, everyone. I'm Nate Fields, Associate Editor for Modern Machine Shop, and I'll be your moderator for today's webinar, Unveiling the Secrets to Achieving Over 95% On-Time Delivery, brought to you by ProShop. In this session, industry expert Kody from Coastal Machine will share his proven approach and strategies for establishing unparalleled reliability. You'll receive actionable tips that will empower your shop to deliver orders on time consistently. Our presenters today are Kody and Paul Van Meter. Paul is the president of ProShop, a web-based and paperless ERP, MES, and QMS system specifically designed for the metalworking industry. They partner with shops who seek to push the edge of technology by going completely paperless, strengthening their ISO and AS9100 systems, combining all their shop software into one system, and building robust business processes to achieve high rates of growth, profitability, and performance. Kody is the general manager and partner at Coastal Machine and Supply. He has been working in machine shops for the past 18 years in various roles, including shipping, QC inspecting, quality management, machining, estimating, scheduling, planning, and operations management. Kody has been with Coastal Machine for 13 years. He has led the charge in diversifying Coastal Machine from 100% oil and gas into other industries, including aerospace, space, and defense for the past 2 years. Before we get started, just a couple of housekeeping notes. First, I want to direct your attention to the panel that's probably on the right side of the screen. You'll see a tab that says Q&A, so if you have any questions at any time during the presentation, submit them there and we'll answer as many as we can at the end. Also note that this webinar is being recorded, so if you're not able to stay for the whole thing, or if you want to refer back to it or share it with a colleague, you'll get a link to that recording via email, usually within a few hours. And with that, I'll hand it over to you, Paul and Kody.
All right, thanks, Nate. Appreciate it very much. All right, well, welcome everyone. This is, I'm excited for this one. Scheduling and delivery is one of the most stressful, difficult parts of running a job shop, especially those high mix, low volume, which typifies so many shops these days. And Kody and his team have done an absolutely incredible job of using all sorts of different tools to achieve, really incredible delivery performance. So I'm excited to introduce Kody. Kody, welcome. Thank you, sir, for being here with me.
Thank you.
I think any other things you want to say about the intro? Nate gave you a nice intro, but
no, he did spot on with that one. So not much more.
Congrats on the partner part of it. That wasn't always the case.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about what inspired this webinar. So this was 3 months ago or so that you shared, this looks like a screenshot from your phone actually, where you shared real numbers pulled out of your system showing your on-time delivery performance. So this column in red is what we're focused on here first. And one of our folks will, it's already been, Abra already dropped the link into the chat. So if you want to go check out the actual post itself. So, you were in the low 70% range, even into the 60s.
Even in the 60s, yeah.
Yeah. And you decided that's enough of this. We're going to do something about this. And you got up into the 99s, 98s, 97s really quickly. So anyway, thank you for sharing that, inspiring this webinar, because I know that's no easy task. And it's a lot. And I think that what hopefully we'll reveal today is the solution for getting that is different than probably what most people think. It's not about having, just super whiz-bang scheduling software that puts all your jobs in the right order. There's a lot more to it than just that.
Correct.
But thankfully, in some ways, it's actually, I think, simpler. But let's get into it. And so the slides you just shared, that was, of course, the last year plus of ProShop. And before you even had ProShop, can you kind of set the stage for what it was like back then?
Yeah. So, before we had ProShop, this is just a good guess because it was hard to really get those numbers. But, we were probably anywhere in 50, 60% range, really probably maxing out maybe 70% on a good month. And we were just all over the place, chasing work down, just trying to get a grip on something. Yeah.
And I imagine it took quite a concerted effort from a lot of folks working it all day, every day.
Yeah, absolutely. That was just a nonstop thing to kind of manage delivery and scheduling and everything that comes with it.
Sounds stressful.
Yeah, it was.
So let's we'll share some stats here. So today we'll give you a sneak peek of kind of where they're at today, and then we'll talk about how we got there. So you have about 8 to 10 new jobs per day coming in. You're up to 22. You just told me you're about to buy one more, so you'll be at 23 machines, about 52 people, and about 300 active jobs at any one time. Is that still about right?
That's about right. Yeah.
Yeah. And how long are you spending?
Currently, 30 minutes an hour.
Okay.
On scheduling and order. Yeah.
Right. So, and that includes getting the jobs in, or maybe I think we actually have a little bit more on this. Yeah. Getting the jobs in, and then just tweaking the schedule of existing jobs to kind of keep everything kind of balanced and on track.
Yeah.
About 30 minutes to an hour a day.
Yeah.
Awesome. So that is, I mean, I know many shops where they have, and I think you were in the same boat, basically a full-time scheduler, expediter type person that spends their entire 8+ hour day just doing this.
Yeah. I mean, that's
still, and that's where you were at, right?
Yeah.
And getting 50 to 70% on-time delivery.
Yeah.
So these are impressive results. I will say it's not completely unprecedented. We had a webinar that we did a few years ago with a client that had about 100 people on 3 shifts, about 35 to 40 machines, and they spent about an hour a day on scheduling. So it can definitely be done. And you're a brilliant example of the shift in what that, and we'll get into the details of what that takes. So this was printed out just last month, or a little bit, I guess, a little more than a month ago. And it includes all the way from last August. So can you just describe for us what went through your head when you decided, all right, this is enough, we're tired of being late. What are we going to do about this?
Yeah, I mean, one of our main customers, we have a yearly supplier review with them, and always, just every year, it was just, bring up on-time delivery. And it's like, we're doing all we can. But really, we wasn't really doing all we can. So just one day we were just tired of chasing stuff around, and we were doing so much work to try to manage delivery dates, and it's just crazy. And if we're spending more time doing that compared to if we just put the effort in to get all the work done up front and get all this right, we spend so much less time on the back end now, kind of managing the delivery dates, because everything's right from the front. And I know we're going to kind of get into that too in those processes, but that's what it did. And, we kind of set goals out. I didn't expect this to do it that fast, to be honest. I kind of set some goals out for the team, say, look, if we can get to 90% in the next 2-3 months, that's great. And in the next 2 or 3 months, you can see we got above 95% right away. Almost very close to hitting 100% for 2 months.
Yeah.
Probably 1 or 2 orders out of those 169 that just didn't make it quite on time.
Yeah. And I'll note for people, there's a couple things about this. Well, first of all, looking at this total number here, this is the number of jobs that actually shipped in that period. So you were down in 140, 150, and now hitting mid 180s. So definitely a higher volume of work at the same time that you're improving that delivery. And then here's, of course, just the graph of the same numbers we see in the column. And then I'll also point out for folks that aren't familiar with this, we did this years and years. We built this page, quite honestly, probably 15+ years ago at ProCNC, our shop where we built the system. And we wanted to know how much of the time we were actually a day early. And then if we were late, were we like 1 or 2 days late, or up to 3, or were we really late? And you can see here in these numbers that, like, on the ones where you're almost at 100, you were at 100 within 1 or 2 days after that. Yep. So if you did have a job that was late, it was not very late. And then here's some other ones where you're, by 3 days, you're in the 98, 99 percentile, pretty much across the board. which means you're even, if something happened that, a vendor dropped the ball or something, whatever happened, it's not a catastrophic event. We can tell from these numbers that it's just a little slip, which is impressive. So good job on that. And so obviously the number of jobs went up, but in this past period of time, you have seen about a 40% increase of revenue. Is that's still accurate?
Correct. Yeah. And last year alone, we increased 40%. So, and then we did this project, the last half of the year. So trying to maintain that, while influx of work coming in it's a pretty daunting task.
Yeah, I mean, I know some shops are also similarly just crazy busy right now, but that often comes at the expense of delivery. Like people are just taking in new orders and just shoving work in every nook and cranny they can. But often that comes at the expense of delivery performance, which I think is a short-term strategy, because if you start pissing off your clients that
absolutely
they're sending you work, it's not going to be. And we will talk actually about that a little bit later.
Yeah. And it's not only, and I'll just add it, and it's not only new work from current customers. We're adding on new customers. Diving into new industries and stuff like that. So it's
yeah. So let's talk a little bit about that and the type of work. So you were almost exclusively oil and gas a few years ago, and then you got AS9100 certified, and we worked you actually on some of those things, and you made some introductions, and you're now really branching out into new industries, which I know from my own experience. When you get new customers, when you're in new industries, there's brand new specs, there's brand new things you didn't know about, materials you're not familiar with, there's different types of cutting tools you need to use because of those materials, and all that variability can have a dramatic impact in sort of the execution of new jobs, or even just understanding new vendors that you need to onboard because your current vendors don't do this mil spec of special anodizing because you've never had to do that before for your clients.
Yep, definitely.
And then tell us about your mix of work, like new versus repeat and prototype versus, what kind of volumes and stuff are you dealing with?
So in 22, we were about 50-50. So we had 50% repeat production, and then 50% new work / prototype, combination of both.
Okay. So yeah, that in and of itself says a lot. This is not just, repeat jobs running the same thing over and over again. This is a dynamic environment, new work, new clients, new things to discover all the time.
Yeah.
So makes what you did even more impressive. All right, let's get into the details of how you actually did this. So we're going to share here a couple of little screenshots of things that actually are in ProShop, but these are critically important things for you to sort of get things to make sure that you're setting yourself up for success. And why don't you just kind of share a little bit about what we're seeing here?
Yeah, so I mean, the biggest thing is taking care of all the work on the front end. You gotta get all your lead times right. You have to have everything right. So I mean, operation lead times. If you have an assembly center, and this certain assembly center, it all takes a day or two for work to pass through. You need to make sure you have lead times on that. Set it to where it's 2 days. And the same thing for outside processing. If they're quoting you 5 to 7 days lead time, well, that's only if it's a local shop. Then you have transit back and forth. So you have to make sure you're adding in all of those times too. So you need to make sure you're accounting for transportation and putting your lead times in right. And then not only that, it's the time it takes to get to the customer once it leaves your facility. So the customer's PO that has the due date, that's the due date they expected at their dock. So you need to back figure that. And if it takes 4 days to get there, you need to finish your work 4 days earlier.
Yep, absolutely. So and I'll go into just a little more detail about what we're looking at here. So these two upper little screenshots are from the estimating module, where you can specifically set a lead time for an operation. So let's say you have, a part with, 3 different machining processes and some anodize, and then you come back for some hardware assembly, and then ship and inspect and ship. So let's say though that, you're doing a job where you have to put in 20 inserts. Putting in 20 inserts is probably going to take you, less than an hour, right? But like, as you said, if you know that basically all jobs coming through that work center, that department, are always going to take at least a day or two, then it's prudent to just put in sort of the worst case scenario, right? Where it's not going to schedule the next thing that's happening, 30 minutes after the assembly operation, because everyone knows that's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
On the vendor lead time here, we have an anodized process with a price and lot charge, but we're also putting in, like you said, that round trip lead time. So if it leaves our dock, we expect it to come back to our dock 10 days later. And that'll, calculate into all the other things about when the machining processes have to be done. And then, as you said, what we call them normal shipping days, because you can always expedite things. But if you want to save the cost, because generally if you're expediting a job that you're late on, that's your bill that you're paying, and that can get pretty spendy. But this is in the contact module. So we set this up for every client with just a few different attributes. And one of these is how long, if we're not paying an expedite fee and we just stick it on a truck or whatever method, could be just your delivery van if they're right down the street. That could be a 0-day lead time. But anyway, and then the actual work cells can be have their own standard lead times as well. So, a great example of that is the inspection department. So even if you only have 10, 15 minutes of some final inspection work, but there's always a queue. There's always a batch of parts waiting to go into that work center. Maybe it's going on the CMM, but there's a little bit of a backlog. Go ahead and make sure you put in those lead times, so you're setting yourself up for the most realistic outcome. Basically, the way I think about it, if you put in like the minimum of all these things, you're just shooting yourself in the foot and not setting yourself up for success to actually deliver that product on time without spending vast amounts of time expediting and like running it to the assembly department. Okay, throw these inserts in right now. I need these done in an hour.
Yeah.
And I imagine that's what you did. That's partly what you and your team did.
Yeah, absolutely. And you just got to, be real with yourself. Don't say, it only takes really a half a day to get this through, when in your mind it's just not how it happens. So be real with yourself. And I just happen to look back, just in the expediting charges alone, compared to last year, this year to date, we're probably saved 60% in expediting charges.
60%.
Yeah. And it's all due to on-time delivery and, getting a handle on the schedule.
Yeah, actually, that was not even a sort of a metric that we even thought much about, quite honestly, at our own shop. But we had a client, actually, him, Chris, from East Branch, was on the same old system you were on. And they mentioned to us years ago in a video, I guess it was, that they had saved more money on expediting fees to processors and overnight shipping charges than their Pro Shop subscription costs them on an annual basis.
Yep.
So, they used to spend, tens of thousands per year on all those fees, and cut them like 97%. So, yeah, awesome. That's a home run in our book. All right, this is another key part of it. What you started doing. Can you tell us a little bit about this? Quoting realistic lead times.
Yeah. So prior we would just quote jobs and not really look at the schedule too much. Just take on work and then just throw it over the fence and let manufacturing deal with it. But then now that we have this approach and we got a handle on things and we know what our actual lead times are of every single machine, no matter what, we can be more proactive. We can. Well, if we know we're quoting on a large order, we can, put a placeholder in the schedule and just say, yeah, we know this is coming. Or if we kind of want to see, what jobs is going to push back, or when we'll actually end the order, we can go ahead and throw it in the schedule. That way we can have an accurate time and you can give our customer an accurate lead time. Say, no, this is, or if we do this, you'll push these jobs back. Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes that is a strategic decision you want to make. If you're quoting for a new client, you really want to provide them with the lead time they need. Saying, we can slide it into this slot right here. It will mean we'll have to pay an expedite fee for this other job, but we're happy to, pay that in order to land this new job for this client that we really want to get. But being intentional about that is the key, right? You don't want to just quote some work, throw it over the wall to programming and machining and say, good luck, guys. Hopefully you can get this all out in 8 weeks. And I know so many shops do that. And sounds like you used to do a little bit more of that. So yeah, being proactive, that is the name of the game for that one.
Yeah, definitely. All
right. And we will get more into the nuance of this collaborative approach in just a few more slides here. And so the other thing, we call them placeholders for this slide, but in ProShop, they're actually called phantom jobs. So you can insert, on any work center, a job of X length of hours and just see what that looks like, how that affects the other jobs down the line, because it'll basically turn those jobs red if they're not going to meet that what we call the must leave by date. And that is, I think, we don't have a slide for this, but that is one of the differences between ProShop and your old system, where we're calculating when a job needs to be finished on a work center, and then ultimately when it needs to leave your shop to go to outside processing, even if that's multiple times, as opposed to just having a due date and you having to do all the mental math to figure out, well, what does that mean for all the different operations?
Yeah, correct.
All right. So there's the tip. Don't just lob new orders over the wall and hope they can deal with it. You definitely want to work collaboratively. So let's talk about your new order process. And this is really when we start getting into sort of the meat and potatoes of that really proactive process of not only when you're setting yourself up right for when you're estimating your jobs, but then once you win those jobs, making sure all the boxes are ticked to make sure you're setting yourself up for success. So let's kind of go through that.
Yeah. So, when we get a PO from a customer, PO's typed by sales, and then it kind of gets sent over electronically to contract review. So they perform their contract review, and then once that's done, it gets sent over into planning. And then planning basically kind of just starts the process of finalizing the work order. He'll go through a checklist. He'll look at confirmed material lead times, send a PO out to the material vendor right away, make sure the delivery is good on that, schedule it on a machine. Sometimes we'll cut POs to some vendors ahead of time to kind of secure our date or our order in their schedule. Because I guess a tip for that, and this might be where you were heading, was you don't want to just pile a bunch of work on your vendor, because then it's chaos for them also. So we on certain processes we'll cut a PO to them out right away, and let them know but this is about what date you should be expecting this order based on our schedule, and this is the due date we expected based on your lead time. So we do that, and then once all of that is confirmed, then we confirm the order to the customer. We take about 24, 48 hours to confirm orders to customers. But we don't do any of that until we know for sure we can hit that delivery date.
Sounds like a solid process. And when you shared about this cutting POs immediately for vendors, that's kind of a brilliant move. We never did that at our shop. And I just having you describe that just makes intuitive sense, right? Plating vendors in particular, any kind of vendors, but they're quoting vast quantities of jobs all the time, and they don't really know what's coming in. And if you have some parts that it's going to be a batch of 50 pieces, and they did quote it to you, so they at least saw the drawing in advance and gave you a price. But if you're like, in about 4 weeks we should have these parts coming, they might be able to start working on their racking, or just making sure that they, in their schedule or whatever system they're using, they're like, okay, we know this is coming. and probably more likely to give you the lead time they quoted you than if it just shows up on their dock one day and they're like, oh shoot, now we have this, all this work that we just all came in at once, and now the time to you is longer than they quoted, which puts you in a bind.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And then over on the right-hand side of our screen here, we see this this must be back on date. Can you just describe how you use that?
Yeah, so the must be back on just basically we'll put that date in our system, and we know this date, this is the date this order has to be back from this outside process for us to continue on our schedule and hit our delivery date. So it's just kind of an extra flag in the scheduling module. It's kind of a different color. So it'll show up if you have more manufacturing processes after, or anything you schedule really, after that outside process. And it'll kind of give us, like when we cut a PO to a vendor, we'll have their lead time to them, but we know like this is the absolute date that it cannot go past this. Because we always, you always want to kind of pad things for stuff that happens. But we know, this is the date that this is our internal due date. This cannot be any later. Anything past this, we have a problem.
Yeah. Fantastic. So I just want to kind of reiterate a couple of points here. And again, we've made the point of don't just throw jobs over the wall, but it is so common in shops where you get a new job and you just try, the intuitive thinking is just, let's immediately get this onto the floor, right? Print off the traveler, put it in a router packet with the drawing, and like send it right out to, to your machinists or to your programmers or whomever. And thinking that, the sooner you can get it to them, that's better. But in fact, that's generally not the case. If you do a little bit more of that sort of thoughtful contract review, and in ProShop, there's a contract review kind of formalized process that's kind of built right into the workflow, or this war room planning, which you mentioned here, where you're getting together with a team and just kind of going through more details if it's a more complicated thing, if it's an assembly. I know we do have some questions that are already coming in, one about assemblies. So that's important. And then, this dashboard with all of these different things you're doing. Some of that is what we see here on the right, this PP check complete. That's called in ProShop, it's called a pre-processing checklist. And even though, we're professionals doing our jobs every day, we know kind of what we do and what we are supposed to do. But checklists can be a really important factor in making sure you just don't forget something. Don't forget to double check, do you need to order a special thread gauge because it's a new thread, you don't have your gauge, or maybe it's out of calibration and it won't be back on time. There's just that level of detail that will bite you without a checklist. And our inspiration for even building checklists into ProShop in the first place was a book called The Checklist Manifesto, which we read years ago. And it was from this study where surgeons decided, they were doing a study where they basically did a pre-surgery checklist, just the same way that a pilot will do a pre-flight checklist. They actually got the inspiration from pilots. And when they put in a pre-surgery checklist for these surgeons, which are highly, highly skilled and trained people, apparently, and it blows my mind to think about this, but the risk or the chance of death based on a mistake happening dropped by 40% just by putting in a checklist. So if a surgeon needs that as a level of help to get their job right, I think we owe it to our office staff, our programmers, our machinists to have a checklist as well, to make sure that all the million little details that need to go right in a job shop, a checklist can only help them out better as well.
Yep.
If you want to read a little more about war room planning, go to LinkedIn and look up My True Position. A guy named Jim Carr has a podcast, and he did one about war room planning just a few weeks ago. So if you're not connected with him, connect with him, but that was a good blog and a podcast episode that he did.
Yep.
All right, and let's talk about your production meetings. This is another thing that you do.
Yeah, so we have a production meeting once a week. and it's usually about an hour-long meeting. And anybody that is involved in the manufacturing process, all department heads, shipping leads, customer support specialists, all these guys will be in this one room. And we'll basically look at various topics. We'll have we'll go through the machine schedule for the week, kind of look to see if there's anything just crazy that we plan on doing, maybe breaking off of a job to, we're waiting on this material to come in. We'll go through open on NCR's list, just kind of get a status of everything. Then we'll look at late vendor POs and see what the status is on those and how it's going to affect any other deliveries. Then we also look at orders that clients are paying expedite for, because those orders should never, ever be late, and you should never, ever move delivery on those orders. They're paying for it. They deserve a top spot and make sure that's there on time. And then just, deciding if delivery needs to be pushed out on something. Our customer support and planner will they use a dashboard that shows orders that, are trending to be late. They might not be late yet, but they could be late based on where they're at in the schedule. And they'll kind of cipher through that, kind of fix it up a little, whatever they need to do, expedite something if they want to do it on our dime. And then anything crazy, they'll kind of bring that in that meeting and then just kind of review it with anybody to get a better sense or to answer any questions or decide what we need to do.
Solid process, that's for sure. Awesome. So that, and before that's your kind of current state. Beforehand, were you still doing just once a week meetings, or were you meeting more often?
We went off and on with even having production meetings. At some point, it felt like we wasn't doing anything, and I think it's just because we didn't have the right processes in place, or the right tools to make things right. So we went back and forth. We would have them a couple times a week. We would do them every other day. We did it once a week. It was always varying.
Yeah. All right, we're going to shift gears and talk about targets, because targets are a really important factor in this equation. So the way that we think about targets, and we thought about it this way at our shop, Pro CNC, and I think a lot of clients have adopted this as sort of a best practice. So and it's a 3-step process. So at the beginning, when you're just quoting a job, you're estimating what that job's going to take you to come up with the price. The estimator, whoever is in that role, maybe it's the programmer that's giving you some run times or setup times or whatever. Whoever is developing that number, they have the best idea at that moment of what it's going to take. When you win the work, we believe it's the best practice to have, assuming this is a job that's going to go to CNC programming before it goes to the shop floor, that your programmers, after they do their job, they have the next best, more refined guess of what that's going to take, right? If you have CNC simulation software, obviously you can get much tighter numbers than what your estimator might think. And then lastly, once the job has hit the floor and you've proven out your program and you've run your whole thing at 100% rapids and feed rates, and it's just ready to what we call certified to run, to prompt the machinist that did that setup to refine it even further. So here's an example. David originally set this cycle time at 27 minutes, and then Paul, the CNC programmer, when we got the job about a month later, right, he changed it to from 27 to 25.5, and then Mary, when she proved out that job and done, we're ready to run production, she was prompted and put in that it's actually 24.8. And this is important because not only does it continually get you more and more accurate, but it sets the software up for success as well. So if you have 100 parts to make, the difference between this and this is that's more than 2 minutes. That's 200 minutes of time that's less time or more time. Sometimes the targets are higher than what it should be originally scheduled. If you have bigger differences, this is a pretty small difference. But if you're off by many minutes, and you have bigger runs, that could be, thousands of minutes or many hours of difference in time.
Yeah.
So that is an important aspect of it.
And
Let's get into.
I just want to add,
Yeah.
it also sets you up for the next time you get the job. So when the job comes through again, it's accurate on the schedule right away.
That's a great point. Yeah. And and the other part, not to do with scheduling, but just more a tip that's really important, and maybe you can share your experience on this as well, is when people see unrealistically low targets, it's demoralizing for them, right? If they're like, how in the world am I going to set this job up in an hour when it's clearly a 4 or 5 hour setup? Like, so when you're estimating, don't sharpen your pencil by dropping the hours, right? Do it with margin. So put in the most realistic targets always for setup, inspection, and running, or any other things you need to do.
Yep, definitely.
Awesome. I think we're slightly behind schedule, so we'll try to pick up the pace a little bit. I'm a little too verbose today. So yes, let's talk about queued work and how you changed that.
Yeah, so what we used to do, we kind of had some queued work sales. So like, let's say for lathe department, we had a lathe staging work sale. And for mill department, we had a mill staging work, whatever department, we just had a staging area that all the jobs would kind of get thrown into, and just kind of wait for the department heads to kind of place it on the machine. And it could be a week or 2, 3 weeks later before that happens. And that's when you're finding out, well, no, we can't run this in time. So what we did was we made sure at the planning phase, we start putting it to the actual machine that is going to run. Now, things could happen and it could change machines later, but at least it's on a machine somewhere and it has a place on the schedule. We don't use staging areas anymore.
I think that's a great strategy. We definitely get asked about that all the time. You obviously can set up queues where things are just kind of waiting to get assigned to the actual machines, but people get busy and they're just working on the urgent and not being proactive and realizing, oh my gosh, I have, in my lathe department, I have 100 hours of available capacity, and I have 150 hours of work that's sitting in a queue that we're now over capacity by 50%, and we didn't even realize it. So, yep, great one on that. Let's talk about some of these. You used to start tracking jobs that you were late on, but now you're tracking why you're late. Can you describe the difference there?
Yeah, so during the initial phase where we were trying to just get on-time delivery under control, we would take the previous month's jobs that were late and we'd figure out, okay, why was this late? Was it capacity? Was it the vendor? Was it NCR? Was it the customer? Whatever it may be. We were tracking that, and then we kind of Paretoed it and we realized, it's just capacity. We were just taking on too much work and not scheduling. So we put the processes in place to do that. But then now, once you're at 95% on-time delivery, you don't have many of those jobs. We're talking about 2 or 3 a month. So then we're like, okay, what can we do next? So now let's track, why are we moving it? Why are we requesting a new delivery date from a customer? So now that's what we're doing. We're tracking that to figure out, okay, why are we moving delivery dates? Is it because we're still just kind of taking on a little bit too much work? Is it vendors that are just kind of pushing us back? And that's what it seems like is more of the case now. So now we're working on getting our vendors on-time delivery correct.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. I know, I've heard lots of shop owners say this, that they just want to, in order to increase revenue and profits, they just want to shove as much work into the shop as they can and, hope that it all works out. But that can work okay in the very short term, but I can assure you it's not a great long-term strategy. And obviously, because you've been increasing, you've increased revenue by 40% over the last year, you're clearly pushing plenty of work through. It's not like you're starving the shop for work just so your on-time delivery is better. You're putting a ton of work through and still getting it there on time. So, when we were prepping for this, you mentioned you were visiting a client and had this sort of epiphany. Can you share what that was?
Yeah. We have just a local customer that we kind of visit every week, and we go on the same day every week, no matter what. And we're over there visiting, and then, they're just kind of all scrambling, not really wanting to talk to us, which is not normal. And then he just started talking. It's the last day of the month. We're just trying to get things right. We're trying to get jobs in from vendors and this. And he's like, but not y'all. We have no problems with y'all. And it occurred to me, it's like, I didn't even realize it was the last day of the month. Used to before, you're always trying to get things in the way, at least delivering parts of the same month that you said they were due. And just trying to make things happen for the month, or, you're trying to hit certain revenue goals, whatever it may be. But now that, our schedule's so tight and we're so on time, we know exactly what we're going to hit every month, and we're not scrambling the last day of the month. So it's just like, it was awesome to see how far we've come, compared to a year ago. Before that was us. We probably wouldn't be able to be over there talking. We'd be at our own shop scrambling.
Good work. Yeah, that's a fun little epiphany. All right, so we're gonna just kind of go quickly through here some common dashboards that you guys use. The ones with these little icons are ones that are set up on an auto refresh inside a ProShop. So, whether it's every 1 minute or 30 minutes or whatever, it just kind of refreshes. And then we'll share a couple of pictures here of those actually out in the shop. So again, just real quickly, just kind of let's kind of go through these here.
Yeah, so we have in our planner, and our customer support specialists share an office, and they have a TV set up, and they'll put on all kind of dashboards depending on what they really want to look at. But their main one is active work orders sorted by must leave by date. So they always see the latest thing or the next thing that needs to go at the top of that list. And then we also look at later scheduled to be late work orders. That is the query / dashboard they both use for the production meetings. The planner uses project assignment, which kind of shows in any new work that he needs to kind of push out into the shop and start planning. Sales dashboard that shows backlog, what we've entered this month, what we've shipped out. Purchasing dashboard that shows anything that needs to be purchased or vendor POs that need to be typed up. And then in shipping, they have a dashboard that shows any jobs that's final inspected and ready to go to the client, and then one right next to it that shows any jobs that is ready to go to an outside process. Then we use a customer service dashboard that shows all jobs due within the next week. We have the custom query that shows jobs that customers are paying expedite fees for. Open NCRs, and in my office I have the sales dashboard, a finance dashboard that shows WIP and stuff like that, and then shop progress that just shows a progress of every job that's going on in the shop. And then finally, it's your delivery numbers dashboard that shows on-time delivery.
Very good. Awesome. So let's share here. So this is, and these are blurred out to keep your data safe, but so that's the TV that's up in the sort of planner scheduler's office. Is that right? Or customer service?
Yeah, actually this one is the one in sales. This is a sales manager I think we might have missed the one in the planning office, but it looks similar. Yeah, they have actually a 50-inch in there.
And I love this double vertical monitors and one horizontal. This is definitely the sweet setup.
Yeah.
And then, here's the one out in shipping. So you can see there's ProShop up on these monitors, but then there's the big TV with, again, the vendors and the clients showing, what's ready to go. And I noticed these little file folder boxes, and you do, because this is the one place where you do need some paperwork, right? You need to print packing slips, print the drawings to go to your vendors, or the document packages for your customers.
Yep.
So these will get inserted into these when they're ready to go.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome. So here's another tip, because when you first implemented ProShop, you did all sorts of rigmarole to try to tweak it from its original functions to make it work like you thought it should work, or your old system worked.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, we were just, we're still trying to do things our old way, which was, I don't know why we would ever want to do that. Our old way wasn't good. So we were just trying to customize ProShop to the way we're so used to doing things, or the way we want to see things. And then slowly but surely, once we realized, well, this isn't working, well, let's try the ProShop way. We tried that way, and it just works so much smoother, and things flow on the dashboards the way they're supposed to. And everybody gets their notifications like they should, and it works. So don't bug the system. Do it the way the system intended.
There is a method to our madness.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah.
So this, when we were planning for this, you mentioned you just recently canceled an order, maybe as earlier this year, but tell us where that came from.
Yeah, so I mean, we had an order come in that we probably quoted a month prior than the customer PO came in, and it went through a normal process of contract review, planning, and everything. And then once it got into planning and we started ordering material and all this stuff, we realized there's no way we can hit this date. So we had to go back to the customer and say, look, we either have to have this delivery date or we just can't take the work. We're going to have to decline it. And that's exactly what happened. They said, well, no, I needed this date. And we're like, well, I'm sorry, we can't do that. That's not possible. So we had to cancel it.
So if they had placed the order within days of your quote, you probably would have been fine, but you'd gotten a bunch more orders. And by that time, you just didn't have capacity anymore.
Yeah.
And so the takeaways there is take the long-term approach. Don't put your client in a bind. Imagine if they'd taken the order and then called a week before it was due and said, hey, we need another week. And that client was really pissed off at you, right? Exactly. So don't do that to your clients.
Yeah.
Here's just a little bit before and after, because again, you have grown as well. So you have about 4 more machines, about a dozen more people. We obviously know about the on-time delivery. And you were spending a good portion of your full 8-hour day just trying to make things on time.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And obviously tons of human input, and you're getting stuff out of spreadsheets and your ERP and all sorts of stuff. Yeah. And now you spend very little. So this about an hour a day, that's done by someone else, not you.
The planner. Yeah. The planner. He does planning and scheduling. Yeah.
Very good. So the next this next slide is hilarious. I was with my partner Kelsey, and we were down at your shop for your annual crawfish boil. And this hallway that goes from the offices into the shop, you were telling us how it used to be completely packed with files.
Yeah.
With folders, job folders. You said they were even, because this is a steel frame door, like magneted both on the edges and on the inside of the door, because there was no room left on the whiteboard or on your sticky board on the other side.
Yeah, that was a nightmare.
I wish we had a real picture of real jobs so we faked it with this one. And this picture actually is from another client where this is the system they used to have. They used to have these manila folders with literally, red Sharpie handwriting and a picture and like scratched out things, or don't do this, now do this, be careful of fingerprints. It's just the difference, the night and day difference in the process is so remarkable and so fantastic.
Yeah.
All right. Let's move things along. So now you're spending about 8 hours a day golfing. Is that correct?
I wish it was that easy.
No.
No, now I'm able to be in the shop more, just, concentrate on improving processes, efficiency, helping whoever needs help or whatever the department it may be. I'm not so tied to the desk and planning and scheduling jobs or anything like that.
Yeah. Well, that sounds like a lot more enjoyable way to spend your day.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. Well, there's a few questions here. Let us get into those. Let's see here. Q&A prioritized. Let's see here. May have missed it, but did they use another ERP system before ProShop? You want to share that, Kody?
Yeah, so we used E2 Shop Tech.
Yeah. Awesome. So let's see here. Oh, wow, there's a lot of questions. So that one is done. Many of our jobs are accounted for in hours. How do you account for breaks, lunch, and other stopping points?
So in ProShop, there's time tracking and time punch or clock punches. So the machinists or anybody will clock in and out for the day, and then we clock in for jobs. And then, but on the schedule, we account for that hour break that everybody takes for lunch. So that is a non-scheduled time on that machine every day.
Yeah, so to put a little bit more nuance to that, you can obviously schedule fewer hours, schedule in an hour and a half less for a lunch and 2 15-minute breaks. But there's also a function that we call the schedule efficiency multiplier. Because even when you schedule out your lunch break and your other breaks, everything doesn't always start and stop the instant something happens, finishes and starts. Like, so when you finish running one job, even if you have some breakdown time, which we do have in ProShop, let's say you have 30 minutes to break down the job, and then you go right into your next setup that's supposed to take 2 hours. There's not a 0-minute, transition point where the breakdown is happening and now the setup is starting like that next second. So this schedule efficiency multiplier allows you to just stretch time on the schedule. So if you had, a job that was 10 hours, but you had a 1.1 efficiency multiplier on the schedule, then it would actually stretch that out to represent about 11 hours of clock time across the work center. And as you start dialing that in over time, you can just get more and more realistic of how long things actually take you, including lunch breaks and people just, going to the bathroom in between jobs or whatever it might be. So that is a strategy that we can use. I have lost my questions. Where are the questions?
Paul, I can hop back in and answer or ask
please.
some of the questions if you
you.
like.
That'd be great.
For sure. So yeah, like you said, we've got quite a few. So one up here is just how long did it take to implement ProShop overall, Kody?
So from the time we started training to the time we went live, I believe it was like 3 months. 3 months.
All right. And then next one we've got is what have your customers said about your new performance? Any positive reactions? I'm guessing there are probably quite a few.
Yeah, definitely positive. We just got an outstanding email the other day that we shared with the whole company. But we just had another supplier review with one of our customers, and they actually gave us a better score than we scored ourselves. We were trying to be modest, but yeah, it's been nothing but positive.
That's awesome.
Nice, yeah. And then what made you decide to improve your on-time delivery when you were already around 80%?
You still, even at 80%, when you're putting out so many jobs a month, when you're hitting 180 or 200 jobs, I mean, even 20% of that's 20% of those jobs you're chasing down, or you're trying to fix or whatever it may be, and you're just putting stress on everybody. And now that we've done all that and we're at 95%, everything in the shop just flows so much smoother, and people have less stress of a job.
For sure, yeah. And then I think you might have touched on this one earlier in the presentation, but this one asks, how many of the 8 to 10 new jobs per day are repeat orders? You said about 50%, right?
Yeah. So we're last year in 22, we were about 50% repeat, 50% new work.
Gotcha. And then the next one we've got is for your scheduling. Is a project a one-off per machine, or do you have larger projects that have multiple components and stages to them?
I would assume you referring to like operations. So yeah, it's not just one op per machine. Most of them can be 4, 5, 6 operations, and they can span 2, 3 different machines.
Gotcha. And next up, how do you handle yield volatility that can sometimes make lead times or process times or yield quantities unpredictable?
I would say we always pad things a little bit. And if you're talking about, I don't know if he's referring to, I would say like if you're scrapping a part or something. I don't know what's your thoughts, Paul. If
you scrap more parts than you thought you planned to have one setup piece, but now you need 2 and you need to buy another piece of material, and then that puts you back on.
Tell the customer right away. As soon as we have a problem with an NCR a part, whether it's an NCR, we're sending something in, or we scrapped a part, we let the customer know right away that, hey, we just scrapped one. Do you want us to move on with it with the rest of the order and just catch this next one up, or do you want to just hold off on anything? And this is the new delivery of the remake.
Gotcha. Next up, can you elaborate on the difference between just setup and part per cycle time and operation lead time? What is the justification for entering an op lead time as opposed to just per part and setup?
I'll take that one.
Yeah.
Very often, work center or op lead time is used for work centers that are not scheduled work centers. So if like an assembly station or inspection or something that you have like, inspection department, you got jobs coming in from 40 different machine, 20, 30 machines, whatever it is, very hard to actually put that in a Gantt chart schedule. So those are often the times where you just put in that work center lead time, which can get also combined with, target lead time. So if you know that you're going to spend an hour to set up your CMM, but then you actually have, a 10-minute runtime to actually probe all 100 parts, that's 1,000 more minutes of time. So sometimes that's the right answer, and sometimes it's just a quick thing, but it's going to take you half a day. So you just throw that into the lead time there. Hopefully that answered that.
Yeah, like for instance, our inspection department, we do a 2-day op lead time. So we just say it always takes an extra 2 days to kind of jobs to get through there.
Yeah, for sure. And next one is, what is your schedule multiplier set to?
Ryan, 1.1. We're at 1.1. I would say and that's because we're so fine tuned now. It just runs great. But if you're starting out, I would maybe start out a higher number and then reduce it down as you get more data into your system.
All right. And next up, please explain more about prints. Do you have prints created by engineering for each sequence, or are you using the customer's print along with instructions for each machining setup?
Yes. So everything we do is to customer print. But during the planning process, programmers or anything, they can put in written descriptions, setup notes, whatever it may be for the machinist.
Gotcha. And then we've got, when you underestimate on a job significantly, how do you handle the entire schedule?
Well, hopefully, the plan for that is to find out before the job hits the machine, so it can get updated, like Paul touched on earlier, with the programmers in the programming department, and it gets updated. And if it's something significant where it starts to push things out, then we have to start looking at, what can we do to bring this back in, whether it's just expedite stuff on our own time, work extra hours, whatever it may be.
For sure. And next we've got, does production have input into how jobs are scheduled? Do you try to run similar jobs together or just allow due dates to dictate scheduling?
I would say it's a combination of both. We do try to run similar jobs together. In ProShop, there's a feature called a run together. We can do that whether, even on the exact part number that you're doing the same setup on. It'll throw it in the schedule as a run together, and it kind of puts everything together. So it's a combination of both.
Mm-hmm. And how do you decide on what overtime is required on a given work center? How much and when to meet delivery commitments?
That it's a case by case basis. It depends. You can go to the customer, and if they're willing to pay for the overtime, and say, no, I have to have it for if the customer's telling you have to have it for this date, there's nothing you can do about it, then you got to do what you got to do. If it's an order that was already paid for expedite fees, then you get, you're doing what you have to do to get it out. I guess it depends on how important the customer is to you, how important the job is to you.
Right. And then this one asks, how was the transfer from your old ERP to ProShop? Did you guys previously use an ERP?
Yeah, we did. So we used E2 previously. It was the biggest transition for us, I would say, was just going paperless, and getting that out into the shop. And it's like, how we're going to live without paper. That was the biggest thing. But once kind of everybody got over that hump and realized the potential that ProShop had, and how it was going to just make everything so much better, it flowed pretty smooth. We took it step by step. And we just kind of implemented things slowly, and started very basic, and then adding on to it, like the PP check, lists. We started very small with it, and then as we grew and understood it, we added on to it. Now we probably have 15, 20 items on that checklist now.
Awesome. And I think we've got time for one more question. We're running right up on 3 o'clock here. So this one says, did you notice a change in morale with your machinists after this process?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I mean, it's if I'm running through the shop and chasing orders down, and why is this late? Everybody's fussing and hollering, and no, it's not my fault, it's your fault. All of this, especially out on the shop floor, is guys see that, and they don't want no part of that. So it kind of brings their morale down. And then now everything's positive, it's smooth. The guys don't have to work so much on a weekends shift. They don't have to come out to be on call and work extra hours or anything like that. So everybody's living a much better life.
Sounds like it.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And so, yeah, I think we'll wrap up the Q&A here. We're at the hour mark. So thank you, Paul and Kody. And I also want to thank ProShop for making this webinar possible, and also Coastal Machine as well. And then thanks to everyone for listening in. Again, you should receive an email with a link to the recording within the next few hours. So thank you all for joining us, and hopefully everyone enjoys the rest of your day.
Thanks, Nate. Thanks. Everybody. Appreciate it, Kody.
Thank you, guys.